Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Everyone on here, thanks for taking the time out of your day to connect. Um, my name's Todd Bustler. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Champify. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. But what I wanted to talk about today was very kind of demand gen oriented. I think the blend between sales and marketing is getting narrower and narrower every day. So I think this topic will resonate with a broad range of folks. Um, there's more noise in the market today than ever before. I've been doing this for about 13 years and it feels more noisy and competitive. I think buyers are confused and inundated. There's a lot of poor outreach, and people are trying to figure out what to do about it. So, what I'm here to talk about today is some of the problems we've seen firsthand at Champify, um, and how I'm convinced that each company, for everyone on this call today, has something unique that they can do to demonstrate the problem that they're after to solve and get in front of go to market conversion issues, customer acquisition conversion issues. So, who am I? I started my company at big company, SAP, trained as a salesperson, sales engineer, and I've progressively gone to smaller companies. So I was the first hire at one of the first few sales hires at Square. Watched a team go from like 60 to 60 reps in 1 year, scaled really quickly. I wanted to go to a smaller company and joined Heap Analytics. I was there from 6 employees to about 300 or so as the first AE, the first director, opened an office in New York, and led sales at time I left was about a $40 million ARR business. Then I spent time in the venture world. So I was an operator in residence where I would get dropped in. Let's say Jenny was an engineer building a product. Our company had funded them. They had no idea really how to do go to market. I would get dropped in their company and figure out where to start. So how do we price this? How do we go to market? How do we get design partners? How do we land our first couple customers? How do you comp and hire certain AEs? Um, One of the frustrations I saw at Heap and at Unusual Ventures was essentially, hey, it's getting harder and harder to do outbound well. We were a company that never was great at marketing and demand gen. So ultimately, out of that frustration, I started a product that's go-to-market focused SaaS company that helps companies who have great customers tap into those biggest advocates and drive pipeline. So, folks like Clary and S&P and Content Square are using us today to monitor their biggest advocates across product users, people that have bought their product, work with their success teams, and not relying on SDRs to find these people manually in a very time consuming and cumbersome way. Nowadays, I spend a lot of my time thinking about marketing. I think I grew up thinking that sales was significantly harder. And ever since I'm in the founder seat now, I've realized that marketing is extremely challenging. And I spend a lot of time thinking about it and why I'm excited to attend some of the other sessions today. The problem I saw when I was at Unusual Ventures helping companies kind of get started, and also here at Champify, is that there's a lot of curiosity from buyers, right? They're trying to figure out problems. For us, that's around pipeline and top of funnel, that we're helping our customers solve. If you have a product in the accounting space or a product in the DevOps space, like people are curious for new solutions that will address their issues, but many of them aren't ready for a formal sales cycle. Many of you have products that are in new categories. That's where we sit. It's a very nascent category, and people are very curious about what exactly this means or what we do. But that doesn't mean buyers are ready to solve that problem right away, right? So the question I have for everyone here today, and I challenge you to think about, is um, how can you add value to the prospect, expand the way that they're thinking about a problem, and help them realize that A, this gap might be bigger than they think, and B, this might be worth prioritizing a bit earlier than they expected. So we thought a lot about the options on how can we start to address this question, right? And what we thought about was, hey, we can improve the way we talk about our product in sales conversations, but that's one-to-one in nature. It's hard to reach many people. We thought about reframing some of our messaging, right? And to me, this is a constant, never-ending exercise that every company is always on that journey. What we landed on was how could we do this in a way that drives more curiosity around the problem, right? What we found is we have to educate people on the problem, get them excited about um, ways to potentially solve that, but focusing on the problem rather than solution has been a pivotal point in how what we approach this issue. So What we ultimately landed on is how do we answer the burning questions that are coming up? So, we listen to all of our sales calls. We have a variety of triggers set up when people are asking specific questions. And I was actually recommended a book when I was starting Champify called They Ask You Answer. I'm not sure how many people have read this, but it was really about, people in the early HubSpot days addressing a bunch of customer questions proactively with blog content. And I think that what we've decided to do is a natural extension of that, right? When we were approaching this, rather than in the they ask you answer format of, hey, let's make a bunch of blogs, let's have a bunch of stuff to optimize for SEO, we were having an issue of, hey, we don't have a hard time getting meetings. People are really curious what our solution does and the problem resonates. They were really asking questions around how big is the opportunity? How long would this take to implement? How do you go about this in an A+ way? Why can't we continue doing the thing we're doing? Right. So what we tried to do is think about what is a unique way for us to answer those questions at scale. So we started to look for some inspiration in the market. Ever since starting Champify, I study a lot of early stage companies. I've become really obsessed with marketing and who does that well. When we looked at the market, we looked at companies like Metadata, right? They do an awesome periodic study on what's happening with trends in terms of the costs of ads on LinkedIn or on Facebook. We looked at Pave, who is in the compensation space and does a really nice job benchmarking for early roles, right? So if you're hiring a new engineer, how much equity should they get? If you're at a company of this scale, how much should you be paying those people based on real data? The other one we looked at was Vendor. I think Vendor does an amazing job at this, at saying, hey, they have hundreds, thousands of companies using the product. They're collecting very, very interesting data that helps people understand what's happening in the competitive landscape, who's winning market, who's losing market share, but also what's the state of buying, right? So what's happening when it comes to um, length of renewal cycles, what's happening for win rate on new deals, how many people are getting involved, right? So these were all three things that I looked forward to consuming. Every quarter when this comes out on Vendor, I take an hour and I read the whole thing. I know about these companies because they do these periodic reports, and it's kept me engaged with their brands. So Taylor runs marketing as a lot of the brains behind Champify, asked ourselves, what are the forward-looking demand gen people and CROs? That's our buyer, that's our persona. What do they want to know, right? What is something that shows unique value that only our product can answer, right? And how do we educate people in a one-to-many way? When we started to think about this, we had kind of two or three criteria, right? The first was, what is the goal in trying to create the version of what other folks have done here? And then what is the unique differentiating data that only we have access to, right? And again, the core focus for us is how do we educate people on this problem, right? So when we looked at this, we said, where are we unique? How can we amplify the problem? And then with our data, how can we proactively address some of those doubts that we were hearing in sales calls? How can we proactively address some of those objections, some stated directly and some indirectly? And then secondly, we're having a lot of conversations with people. They're getting educated on the problem, which means we're targeting the right people. They may not be in market, but we have a big list of accounts that we want to begin to nurture, right? And how can we do that without focusing on our product? The other framework that we thought a lot here was you can go and tell the market a bunch of things, or you can show them, right? And I come from a data background. A lot of our team comes from a product analytics data background. We use the framework of show versus tell. Show is much more powerful than telling. So what we did was we dug deep in our data, right? So we're lucky enough to have 100 plus customers at some of the leading, fastest growing B2B organizations. And people were really curious around, why do I even need to track advocates, right? What could be the impact on the entire go to market funnel? How much more productive is a strategy that Champify offers versus other outbound bets I can make? People would ask us questions like, hey, we may be doing this already in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. What is the true gap that you're going to be able to solve? what are the different audiences and how valuable they are, right? So in our product, we look at help people think about their advocates in different flavors, right? So who are people that have bought their product? Who are people that are working with their post sales teams? Who are people that are just users of the product, right? And people wanted to know, how does that compare to outbound, right? And why should we prioritize something like this? And then we got a lot of questions around, how often does a job change matter? Like in terms of, if they changed 2 years ago, how much more impactful or less impactful is that versus 3 or 6 months ago? We got a lot of questions on when's the right time to reach out, exactly when, who should be the person that does that? What impact do you have on close rate? So you can see I'm saying a lot of very detailed things. All of these were directly sourced from calls that we had and questions that we started to get from our customers. So in putting this together, right, this was a very unique thing that only we could answer. This was something that people were already having curiosity around. And then thirdly, this gave them a way to engage with our brand, get more educated on the problem before they were necessarily ready to move into a sales cycle. Now you might say, great, that's a cool looking PDF. I like the GIF you showed. What does this mean? Like, what was the impact, right? So when we thought about, hey, we're going to spend time, we're going to spend money, we're going to spend attention on this report. It's not easy to produce. It took a lot of hours, right? It took a lot of third party help. How do we use it, right? So we looked at this in three areas. Our problem, or our challenge that we were looking to overcome, was not getting into conversation. It was getting people to act, right? So with this, now we're top of mind, right? With information focused on that problem. Even if they want to look at a competitor, right? They're looking at the problem, they're going to do something. There's a higher likelihood that they're moving down that kind of customer acquisition journey. We've also built up a lot of closed lost ops, right? That did nothing or stayed with status quo. This became a great thing to reach out to. And then lastly, in creating all of this, both from a research standpoint and from a content production standpoint, we had dozens of great posts that were very interesting from a data perspective that helped feed our content engine. So again, the core goal of this wasn't an awareness thing, but it also helped feed the content engine, which led to more awareness for us. And the results have been staggering. So this is a pretty major impact on the business. We're a seed stage company, so we're not massive yet. When we launched this, it almost 2x our traffic, which was again kind of a secondary benefit. I think the more important thing is it helped reopen both nurture and close loss opportunities, more than 10 of them, and ops that were active opportunities that people were viewing this were converting significantly faster, right? So again, thinking about where we could be unique and what's the actual impact on the funnel for what we were looking to solve. So my question for everyone today is, how can you focus on the problem and give your buyers a reason to re-engage? I think a lot of people say, how do we get these people to buy? But the idea is you're really trying to get them to re-engage. While most of your competitors are running a lot of the same playbooks, automated outbound, getting an intent, running a LinkedIn strategy, whatever that may be, I would encourage everyone to lean into where are you uniquely equipped to capture the attention and tell a story with data. That's all I have for today. If you enjoyed this, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot about what we're building at Champify, kind of building in public, experiments we're running, mistakes we're making, and other learnings along the way and go to market from my last 13 years in this business. If you're a company above 150 employees that has a lot of happy customers, high NPS, great G2 reviews, but really not seeing the second order benefits of that revenue, in the form of seeing people that are buying the product, moving to other companies and trying to bring them with you, Champify may be able to help. I'll open it up for questions. Jenny, I know you might have a few, but that'll conclude what I wanted to share today.
Great. I'll just jump in here to help facilitate if anyone wants to drop a question. I've received a couple, so I thought I'd just go ahead and ask them and kind of like get your input. But I noticed an interesting kind of commonality between the things that you talked about and the things from the keynote that we had earlier today. And in the keynote, Heather mentioned that if you have a product that people love, you will find success. And you also kind of started with that people are curious, that they're looking for problems. They have problems and they are looking for solutions. I think through this event and just looking on LinkedIn, I've just noticed that a few marketers and salespeople feel that like growth is down. It's not as high as they've seen it in the past. Do you have any insights or advice on that? Because like if we're saying if you have this amazing product, you'll be fine. What's the missing piece then of you may have a product people love, but is it just you're just not selling it to the right audience? And that's really where the personas come in.
Yeah, well, first of all, I disagree with it. I used to think, the best product wins, right? And I think that's
Mhm.
really untrue today. I think if you look at any category in any space, and we know this from our customers or prospects we talk to, markets are getting more crowded. I think we're still dealing with, 2, 3 years of a lot of overfunding and a lot of people going after markets that may not be big enough. And I think in the US, it's particularly more competitive. So I don't think the best product always wins, right? I think it's on us as sales and marketing leaders to understand, are we being really targeted in the accounts that we can definitely win? Are we spending our right time in the right areas? If you're in a new category, are you spending almost as much time you are educating on the problem than you are on your solution? And it probably should be more 2/3 problem oriented, 1/3 solution oriented. So I think, in an ideal world, the best solution, kind of the best product wins. But I think today it's really a combination of good product, which is table stakes, really good go to market from an awareness and brand building perspective. And also, you can differentiate in the sales process, right? Like I was talking to my friend the other day that runs a closed lost product that helps you understand, why are buyers choosing you? What are they doing? And at the end of the day, I think sales has way bigger impact on people's decisions than we like to think about. So I'd encourage people to think about the entire go to market process as a differentiator as well, in addition to the product, because time and time again, I think, products are getting very similar in different categories. It's way easier to copy new features. It's way easier to, or way harder to build technical modes, right? So I think about go to market as the differentiator that I think is a key takeaway.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, go to market is so critical. I know sometimes it can be even challenging to really align your marketing and sales. Do you have any advice on really how to get that alignment in your go to market?
I think it starts with comp. I think like we're away from the days of, hey, what's inbound, what's outbound. First off, it's just way harder to tell, right? Like how much of an impact of me posting on LinkedIn helped an SDR book a meeting, right? Like we hear all the time on cold calls, oh, I've been reading your stuff on LinkedIn for a long time. Okay, the SDR did the job, but like actually marketing helped make that happen. So the way we approach it is everyone's aligned to the same goal. It's revenue, it's not even pipeline. And I think that just gets people focused on what matters. And at different points in your company's evolution, it might be, hey, we actually need to increase top of funnel because we're not having enough meetings, or hey, we're seeing a conversion rate down funnel. We need more help on the positioning, product marketing. So I think it starts with comp, which then allows people to get on the same team and understand what are the biggest problems to fix. And there's always something, right? There's always something you're chipping away at.
Yeah, no, I love that. Another question I saw is how do you find ways to show your audience what you offer? You mentioned using info, customers, prospects. We're already asking about, but how do you learn what your audience is looking for?
I think most of it comes up on sales calls, right? What are the things they're asking for that maybe your sales collateral doesn't address? We spend a lot of time in different communities where our buyers are and see what people are asking for. An example of one we're hearing a ton around and we're building a lot of content in a series around is, hey, we're turning on outbound for the first time. We don't have an outbound culture. Like, yes, we know what to do, we know what to say, we may know the tools, but like how do you build that culture, right? So that's something we've heard and we're building a lot of content around right now. But I think it comes from listening to the customers and prospects, seeing what people are talking about in Slack groups and community groups, and then also just, you know if you're in sales or you're a founder, you're having these conversations, like you should know where some of this is going and what is the next question people are going to ask, and then do your best to answer it. Now, how you answer it, the forums, etc. I think this impact study that I talked about is a very unique way to go about it. I think there's more products than ever to do it in a one-to-many way, whether that's interactive demos on your site or product tours or Loom videos or whatever that may be. I think it's find out what the strategy, what the medium is that your buyers like to engage in, and then double down on that.
Very interesting. The other thing I want to touch on is like at the very beginning, you kind of threw out, I don't know if it's risque, but you said that's you used to think that sales was way harder, but now that you're a founder, you feel that it's kind of swayed the other way, that you believe marketing is harder. What difficulties of marketing have specifically surprised you, and how has this adjusted your approach?
I think sales is hard, right? And I think
Right.
the markets are competitive. It's harder to differentiate products. I think that's a reality a lot of us are facing. I think like one-to-one combat, you can get really good at, right? I think like you can get really good at all the objections. You understand when you're going to win or lose. You can start to figure out the qualification. I think the marketing is significantly harder because it's a one-to-many format, right? And I think there was some first mover advantages of who's the first people to be using LinkedIn or who's the first people to really go deep on Reddit or a community, but a lot of that has been figured out, right? So like finding a new channel that's going to magically work like Facebook ads did 8, 10 years ago, that doesn't really exist, right? So I think marketing has shifted quite a bit from the analytics nerd who's amazing at measuring every little step and every customer acquisition cost and getting really good attribution to creative marketers. Like I think marketing has made a big shift into being really creative. What are the right events you run? What are the right messaging? And I think that's just a really hard skill set. So when I see good marketing, I just have a ton of respect for them because standing out on a one-to-one sales call is doable. Standing out in one-to-one around not only your competitive solutions, but all the solutions you're competing for budget with, I think that's extremely challenging. I have more and more respect for great marketers every single day.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a lot of really good points. I like how you keep bringing it back to as well. Like it's this one to many that we should all be really focused on. Um, so, last question I have for you. It sounds like a lot of the message and your product stems kind of from like that iceberg principle. From what you've seen and your experience, how significant is this principle across the different areas of a company?
Um, Specific of like, Pareto, where can we do 20% of the work and get 80% of the output, or specific for our product offering?
Specific for your product offering.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. So I started Champify with two co-founders because of a problem we dealt with firsthand at Heap, right? And what that meant was from like 0 to 15 million in ARR, we got really good at outbound. Now, doing this in 2016, 2017, 2018 was a very different time, right? Like you could get Crunchbase and Zoom Info and Outreach and do magical things and get SDRs booking 20, 30 meetings a month. Like that time has gone away. Like people responding to outbound messages is 10 times more challenging. I personally think AI is just making that problem way worse, and it's going to continue to make it harder and harder to stand out. I think there's a window for cold calling right now. We book most of our meetings over the phone. I think that window is going to start to close as well because spam blockers and people not wanting to answer their phones. What is not going away is great sales, marketing, and product experiences that people have had with your brand, right? I met Jenny and I had a great sales experience, or I've been consuming their content and getting value from it, or the onboarding was incredible, or the product team continuously delivers on issues we have. People remember those experiences, right? And what we found is that 2 to 3% of people are changing jobs every month, many of which are going into accounts that customers care about, but they're leaving it up to a 23-year-old SDR that doesn't have the right resources to go and act on that, right?
Mm.
So I think what we're seeing is kind of shift back to more traditional sales tactics that have been around for hundreds of years. And our product's well positioned to help people capitalize on that. And to
Yeah.
answer your question directly, it's like, people that have really good RevOps process, we found that they miss 85 to 90% of what we deliver when most people think they do a really good job on this. And that's where stuff like the impact study helps educate people on the gap using real data.
No, I love that. I also really like you didn't say it directly, but implied with bringing up AI and how it's kind of making some things more difficult, but it's ultimately just coming back to that. Like more human. People ultimately want to buy from a human and not a robot. And that sounds very key.
And I'm super bullish in AI. I think there's some really great use cases. We have a lot of great use cases in our product on, who are the right titles, what are the right recommended actions, right? But I don't know about you, Jenny. I get 10 automated AI driven emails every day. I never open one of them, right? And I think all that's doing is clouding the brain space for people that are doing really, really tailored, high value outreach to solve a legit problem I have. Further making this problem more challenging, regardless of how good this AI gets, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense. Well, I really appreciate you joining us today. And just reiterate, if people have questions or trying to reach out, is the best way just through LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on there. Feel free to shoot me a DM. If anything we said about Champify, you can go to our website and learn a bunch more. Or even if you're just trying to think through outbound and go-to-market strategies, I'm happy to riff up with people. We've made a ton of mistakes here at Champify. I've made all the mistakes at my Heap journey. This stuff's hard and always changing, and there's no silver bullet, right? It's constantly tweaking on whatever metric can be improved and then work on the next one. So I appreciate Jenny inviting me and having me on, and thanks everyone for taking some time out of your busy days.
Yeah, thank you.